Hello and welcome back, adventurers. This is Captain TTRPG, and today we're talking about Pathfinder 2nd Edition. The steady, foreboding beat of war drums sails carelessly through the night air, carrying fate on its shoulders. A stalwart band of daring yet unseasoned would-be heroes hides amongst the tree line, awaiting the horde on approach. Amongst the ambushers, however, resides a brilliant, albeit older gentleman known for sound strategy and effective tactics. In sunlight, he would gleam in a shining plate armor, sturdy shield strapped to his left arm, which boasts an ornate flag of his family crest. As the horde makes its way up the ravine, the younger amongst the party lying in wait become impatient. At the behest of the shrewd tactician, the barbarian and ranger hold just a moment longer. Finally, as the sweat breaks upon the barbarian's brow, the command is given. The young sorcerer amongst them is instructed to lay down a thick sheet of ice beneath their feet as the raging machine of chaos plows into the green-skinned mob. Arrows fly at specific targets before the silvered-haired master of arms himself weighs in with pistol in hand and shield raised. A fine mist of blood and anguish fights for space in the air filled with barked commands as the battered yet driven band of fighters wade through bone and muscle. Welcome back, adventurers. Today is a special edition of the videos here because we got a new book out. That's right, BATTLECRY is here. BATTLECRY is very exciting to me because it's the first release since I've been deeply in my videos. I know I had War of the Immortals. Wasn't quite rolling then, I've been rolling now. So this one to me is a big deal. And it's a big deal because I love the classes added, specifically the Commander, and that's what we're talking about today. Commanders are battlefield tacticians. They support the party, they help them lean into what they're best at, while opening up new opportunities to utilize your allies' skills in combat. Commanders are near marshals. These are characters that are martial, but their primary ability score isn't strength or dexterity. In this case, it is intelligence, like what we see with inventors, investigators, and alchemists. They get 8 hit points per level rather than 10 with a regular full martial, which is again what we see with things like inventors and thaumaturges. They are proficient with martial weapons and all armors, all the way up to heavy by default, which means they're going to have a solid offense and defense out the gate. You are expert in perception, reflexes, and will saves, with only trained in fortitude as kind of like your downside here, so solid saves as well. This has a build your own style of subclass where you get to choose 5 tactics to start out that kind of build your subclass at level 1, but more on that in a bit. Your base stat, again, is intelligence. This is what everything's based off of, so it means you'll be inherently good at knowledge skills like arcana. Also, you're going to be great at crafting and society. You'll have a lot of skill proficiencies because even though you only start with 2, you get 2 plus your int mod, and your int mod's probably 4, so you'll probably start with 6 proficiencies outside of what you get by default with the class. You won't have the same plus to hit as full marshals, keep that in mind, because, well, at least not at the beginning, just because strength and dexterity aren't your primary ability scores, but it's only a +1 difference and only part of the time. The Commander has 5 key level 1 features and terms that we need to discuss for you to understand really how the Commander plays. The first and most important of these is tactics. This is the set of commands that you can give out and utilize in and out of combat to afford different actions and reactions and free actions and abilities for your allies. There are 4 tiers of tactics. You've got the base tactics, which are available at level 1. This is actually 2 combined. This is your offensive and your mobility tactics. We'll get into those. And then there are expert, master, and finally legendary tactics you can take as you level up. The tactics can be used to take movement actions, attack actions, and then actions that aren't so easily pinned down as all that. When you use a tactic, it has to be given toward at least 1 team member called a squad mate. These team members are decided upon at the start of day, and you get to have so many squad mates equal to 2 plus your intelligence modifier. Let's be honest, it's going to be your whole party. You are a squad mate, by the way, and you don't count against that number. The chance of it not being your whole party seems really, really low. Finally, you can use more than 1 tactic per round, but only 1 tactic can be given to the same squad mate per round. So I can't give 2 tactics in the same round and have them both affect squad mate X. Okay, great. So how do I get tactics? Well, At level 1, you get what's called a folio. Think a playbook, right? So at level 1, you get to add 5 tactics from the mobility and offensive tactics, of which there are 14 available to choose. During daily prep, you're going to prepare 3 from your folio to be your active tactics for the day. Now, you can spend 10 minutes of downtime at any point, outside of combat, obviously, to swap which ones you have prepared. And it can be swapping any number of these that you've got available to you from your folio. You can also switch which allies are squad mates for those tactics during the same time. But let's be honest, it's probably your whole team anyway. And if you do switch it, it doesn't use up their 10 minutes. It's just yours that get used up. They can still do whatever they're doing. If you have tactics with limited uses per day, like there are some that are like once per day use or things like that, you can swap those out. And so like I've already used my once per day. There's no point in having it anymore because I can't use it again. Great, I can swap it out. If I swap it back in later, I can't use it again. So once it's been used for whatever uses, that's done for that time period. But at least I don't have to have the wasted spot in my folio anymore, in my prepared tactics, assuming I have the 10 minutes to give. You get access to expert level tactics at 7th level. When you do, you get to add 2 more to your folio, and now instead of preparing up to 3 at a time, you can have 4 prepared at a time. At level 15, you will get master tactics. You'll learn 2 more to your folio, and you can have now 5 total prepared at a time. And finally, at level 19, you get legendary tactics. You get 2 more added to your folio, and now you can have 6 prepared at a time. And remember, other than the ones that have specific reduced usage, so like once a day or things like that, other than that, you can use these round after round after round. So there's not limited use in that way, generally speaking. There are feats that will allow you to add more to your folio, by the way. And of course, you could retrain permanently to remove some out of your folio, but this will take time. GMs, if somebody really feels like they don't have the right set in their folio and they're never going to use it, I suggest just making sure that you've got the time available for them or reduce the amount it takes. So those are probably the most important to understand, but we also have Commander's Banner, which is actually equally important. I don't know why I said it wasn't. So this is either a standalone banner that's something like you can hold, it's a banner on a pole or something like that, or it's a banner that's affixed to like a weapon or shield, so you don't have to have it held in a separate thing. It can even be stuck onto your backpack. This creates a 30-foot emanation around you, granting +1 to will saves and DCs against fear effects to all allies in that area. Also, that area is the aura you're creating when it comes to your tactics. If this is some reason, like meaning your banner is broken or taken, then the bonuses no longer happen. You don't have that aura, and everybody who was in that aura becomes frightened 1. Don't lose this, don't get it broken. I would assume most of the time you'd want it attached to a weapon or shield or backpack, so you don't have to use a hand to carry it, but there's reasons you might want to actually carry it as well. So just think about how you might want to do it. Any way could work. You have to have your aura active, meaning your banner with you, or banner active, doesn't have to be with you, we'll get to that, in order to use tactics at all. And most of your tactics, even though not all, but most of them do require allies to be within that aura. The final unique feature for the class is called Drilled Reactions. Once per round, you can give 1 extra reaction to any squad mate for them to take advantage of, specifically for a tactic you give them. That way, if you've got, say, a fighter with reactive strike, then they can still have a reaction for reactive strike while you give them a free reaction to use for using one of your tactics, which is really important. Also at level 1, you do get Shield Block, which is a reaction that a lot of different shield-bearing classes do get. Still solid, so it's kind of pushing a sword and board thing. You don't have to use it, but at least it's here if you want to have a shield. So what are the unique higher level features? Well, we do have one here, and it's a really good one, called Warfare Expertise. This is for level 3, you become expert in a special lore called Warfare Lore. You can use it to recall knowledge about any creature, but there are some restrictions. You can only recall things about weaknesses and resistances, things like that, things that relate specifically to combat. GMs can determine, though, whatever they think might be reasonable, depending on what you're asking for. If you can see at least 1 enemy when you roll initiative, you can roll with this lore instead of rolling perception. So if you, again, this is going to be intelligence-based, you're going to have really high, you're going to be expert in it starting at level 3 when you get it. It might be a better choice than perception. This also increases on its own as you level up, so you don't have to put any training into this. Instead, you're going to become master with it at level 7 and legendary with this lore at level 15, making it really a solid way to recall knowledge. Lore skills based on int are just very powerful for int-based classes like this. Clearly, there are plenty of things to learn with this class, but similar to something like an exemplar or an inventor, once you get into it, the mechanics of it really aren't that hard to understand. Having said that, we do still have to build our subclass, which means we need to talk about the tactics. I will go through all of the level 1 tactics, and I'll give a couple examples of higher level tactics as well, so you get a concept for them, starting with the mobility level 1 tactics and defensive retreat. This takes 2 actions from you. It affects all squad mates inside your aura. When you use it, all allies can, and keep in mind, for all tactics, your squad mates don't have to do what you're putting out there as one of your tactics. They choose to or not, okay? I think generally they're going to want to because these are really great to take advantage of, but they don't have to. So, all allies can step up to 3 times as a free action. They must move away from at least one creature they can see and only get closer to another creature if it's the only path to retreating. So this is all moving away from enemies to get them out of harm. Gather to me. 1 action. This is for all squad mates, and this includes them outside of your aura. All allies can use their reaction to stride, but must end either in your aura or as close to your aura as they can get as possible. This is a way to gather the team up for things you want to do in the future, especially if they've gone outside your aura and you need to get them back to it. Mountaineering training, 1 action. This is for all squad mates. You and your allies, but in the aura, sorry. You and your allies gain a climb speed of 20 feet until the end of your next turn. You can use warfare lore for your personal climbing rather than athletics if you have this prepared. So you don't have to use it, you can just use warfare lore to climb. This can be used in combat or out of combat. Naval training, similar to mountaineering training, but for swimming instead of climbing. Same thing for your warfare lore, by the way. Passage of lines, this is 1 action, affects all squad mates in your aura. All allies can use a free action to swap places with an adjacent ally. It only works if the space to swap fits both of them, or the smaller can choose any spot. If there was like a larger swap and you're filling in a space of a larger creature, then you can choose any of the 4 spaces from that larger creature, assuming it's large versus medium. But generally speaking, you have to have space to swap, but at least you can swap. And our last mobility tactic is protective screen. This is 1 action. It's for 1 ally, and this is for 1 ally in your aura. The ally strides toward another ally in the aura. If that first ally ends adjacent to the squad mate in the aura that they're running towards, that squad mate can cast spells or use ranged strikes without triggering reactions. This lasts until the end of the second squad mate's turn, next turn, or until the 2 squad mates are no longer adjacent to each other, whichever comes first. But normally, again, when you try to cast a spell or used a ranged strike, like with a bow or something, when you're adjacent to an enemy, if that enemy can use a reactive strike or something like that, they will be able to. This prevents that. So a nice setup, especially for somebody who is concerned about taking actions and then getting beat down by some huge monster. That brings us to our offensive tactics, starting with coordinating maneuvers. This is 1 action. This is for 1 squad mate in your aura. The ally can step as a free action, and if adjacent to an enemy, can attempt to reposition that enemy as a reaction. Double team. This is 2 actions for 1 squad mate in your aura with an enemy within reach. So they have to have an enemy within their reach. The ally can attempt to shove or reposition as a free action if the enemy ends up next to you, the commander, or a second ally that isn't the one you gave the command to. Because of a successful shove or reposition, the second ally, or yourself if you happen to be that one, can make a melee strike as a reaction. So it's a little repositioning to possibly cause a reactive strike, basically. End it! This is 2 actions. This is for all squad mates in your aura. You must have more team members than enemies, and an enemy must have died since your last turn. Then, all allies can step toward an enemy as a free action. If an enemy is within 10 feet of one of the allies that stepped, it must succeed at a will save against your class DC, or become fleeing for a round. If they critically fail, they become frightened 2 and fleeing for a round. So this is really just saying this battle should just be over. Pincer attack, 1 action. This is for all squad mates in your aura. All allies can step as a reaction. Any creature that is adjacent after the step is off guard to you, the commander, and all allies who responded to this tactic until the start of your next turn. So that's a potentially lot of off guard enemies. Reload, 1 action. This is for all squad mates in your aura. All allies can use a reaction to reload. Straightforward. Shields up, 1 action. This is for all squad mates in the aura. All allies can raise a shield as a reaction or raise a parry weapon as a reaction. If you have a caster that has the shield cantrip, they can cast that cantrip as a reaction instead. Very defensive. Strike hard. This is 2 actions for 1 squad mate in your aura. That squad mate makes a strike as a reaction. Straight up. Simple but effective. Tactical takedown. This is 2 actions. This is for 2 squad mates in your aura. Both of these squad mates stride up to half their speed. If both end, as a reaction, if both end adjacent to 1 enemy, that enemy must succeed at a reflex save against your class DC or fall prone. And those are all of the level 1 tactics. I'm going to give a quick example from each of the other levels. For expert, we have Stupefying Raid. This is 2 actions for 2 squad mates in your aura. Both allies use a reaction to stride. Any enemy that they are adjacent to at any point in their stride must make a will save against the commander's class DC or become stupefied 1. This is stupefied 2 on a crit fail, and that is until the end of your next turn. Master, ready, aim, fire. This is 2 actions. This is for up to 3 squad mates in your aura. This can be used once per 10 minutes. Allies can reload for free, so a free action to reload, and then use the reaction to strike all at the same target that you choose that they can see. If an ally has a cantrip with range of 30 feet or more, they can use that instead of firing a weapon. So there's everybody just ranged strike on 1 target. And the legendary Valkyrie's Charge. This is 3 actions from you, once per day. This is for all squad mates in your aura. You and all squad mates regain 80 hit points. Now, this is even if somebody's unconscious, mind you, as long as they're not dead. They're just at 0, but they're unconscious. You all regain 80 hit points, which is crazy. If you were raised from unconscious, you also get to stand up as a free action and pick up any weapons you have dropped. Then, all of your allies in the area that got this can stride twice as a free action. And if they end their movement within the reach of an enemy, meaning they have with the reach of an enemy with their weapon, they can strike as a reaction. Wild, which is why it's once per day. All right, so that gives you a taste of some of the tactics that you can look forward to. Now let's get into the level 1 feats for the class. We've got Armored Regiment Training. This is level 1. You treat heavy armor as one bulk lighter, and you can sleep in it, which usually you definitely can't unless you want to become fatigued. Also won't slow you down during travel. Combat Assessment, level 1, 1 action. For this 1 action, you make a strike, and on a hit, you get to recall knowledge on the target for free with a +2 bonus if you crit. And you can only do it once per target per day, but if you have but if you've got your Warfare Lore, you can use your Warfare Lore for this, which makes it really good then. Commander's Companion, level 1, you get access to a young animal companion. And you specifically get one as a mount. You can attach your banner to it via its saddles or reins or something. Don't think a horrible way. Usually it's one with the mount ability. That's probably what you lean into. Your GM might care, might not. It is a squad mate and counts as one. And if you use 1 action on your turn to command your pet, it will also gain a reaction that it can use on that round for responding to one of your tactics. So that's kind of a lot piled together. Deceptive Tactics, level 1. You can use your Warfare Lore instead of Deception to feint or cause a distraction. And you can use your rank in Warfare Lore to take feats related to upgrading those skills. Things like Lengthy Diversion. However, you get Lengthy Diversion in this case for free. So you're getting that and being able to use basically your best skill for feints and causing distractions. Officer's Medical Training. Level 1, you become trained in medicine. You can use that instead of wisdom for medicine checks, like treat wounds, and you get battle medicine skill feat for free, which of course is the one action in combat way to heal allies. If you are already trained in medicine, you get to choose another skill to become trained in, so don't worry about wasting that. Again, really solid use of just your best skills, or just your best ability score. Plant Banner. Level 1, this is one action. You're going to slam your banner into the ground and create what is now a 40-foot burst from that location as your aura. All allies in the aura are going to gain temporary hit points, all squad mates in the aura, again, I'm just assuming it's your whole team, are going to gain temporary hit points of 4, plus another 4 if you're at level 4, and then every 4 levels above gives another 4, which is a lot of temporary hit points. If they start their turn, any ally, any squad mate who starts their turn in the aura gains the temporary hit points that last for the one turn. That's a lot of temporary hit points. Now, at this point, your aura is coming from your banner, so all of your squad mates and their ability to use things in the aura have to be within that 40-foot burst of your planted banner, rather than of you specifically. The banner does gain extra hardness when you plant it like this, equal to your level plus your int mod. That's because if destroyed, it still has the same problem before. In this case, a creature, by the way, can just run up and steal it for a single interact action. You can also pull it out for a single action, but be aware, you're leaving it for enemies to potentially take from you, which has some serious downsides. That's all of our level 1 feats. Let's look at a couple higher level ones. Adaptive Stratagem, this is level 2. This is a free action. When you roll initiative, you can swap one of your expert, mobility, or offense tactics for another one in your folio. So you can't do it with your master or legendary if you've got them, but the other ones you can swap out just on an initiative roll, which can be really helpful if you're going to go combat to combat without having 10 minutes between. And Rallying Banner. This is level 8, one action. Once per 10 minutes, you wave your banner and roll 4d6, restoring that many hit points to all allies that are currently in your banner's aura. If you've got it planted, it would be there, but then you wouldn't be waving it around. Anyway, in the aura. This is increased by 1d6 for every 2 levels. However, the amount that you heal is halved if you do this outside of combat, but you can still do it outside of combat, which is once every 10 minutes, which kind of makes it really solid, just constant healing for the party, but really good in combat. Now that we've gotten through your level 1 feats, let's talk about the class breakdown graph that I like to do. Commanders are the pinnacle of versatility, matching the best casters out there. They can be built to have a variety of options for any situation, both to perform themselves, being just martial characters that they are, and provide to the team. With a large enough folio and some of the options to swap out tactics, you are truly a master of tactics in ways that other classes just can't be. Easy 5 to kick things off. As martial characters, they are solid single target damage dealers, even though a lot of their feats really aren't focused that way. So they get a 3 here, but you're not going to have a lot of feats that really focus on making you stronger, or features really that really focus on making you stronger on your individual part of combat, and a lot of your focus is going to be on your tactics. So you won't use probably as many actions every round for dealing damage single target, but you're still a martial, and you're still going to deal good damage. On the AoE damage side of things, this is really not a strength of theirs. I'm going to give them a little boost here because you have tactics that allow your allies to deal damage to kind of enemies en masse, especially some of the later ones. So it's basically you're doing AoE through them. So I'm going to push it up to a 2, but not a lot of their tactics do this. I just don't think it's a strong suit of theirs, but not everything will be. However, you want support? Oh, we've got support. This is like cleric levels of support. But in this case, the support is even more versatile than just what a cleric does for support or some of the other support-based classes. With many of the tactics providing allies buffs, extra actions, survivability, if I could give a 6, I would give it a 6. But I don't do that, so this is a 5. It's another lovely crown to wear on top of the crazy tactics crown that it already wears. Control does absolutely come up with tactics, but it really isn't the focus. and you yourself won't be doing a lot of the controlling of the battlefield. You do have absolutely tactics that are focused on that, but I still don't think that's the focus of your tactics. Even though shifting enemies around and setting allies up for buffs, really part of that is control, it's really not your focus, which is why I'm just giving this a 2, but it could be argued to a 3 as well. Finally, we have survivability. Commanders have heavy armor at the gate, which is fantastic. The 8 hit points per level, though, is kind of a downside and feels low for a martial that might want to wade into combat in melee. For saving throws, though, they start out solid, just getting a low fort, but really good reflex and will saves. Sadly, I can only give them really a 3 here, but I'm really thankful they've got the heavy armor to really help boost them up in this area. Commander builds will most likely live between 2 setups, either a heavy strength build if you're going to weigh into melee, or more of a dex build for ranged characters. However, they could lean into a third option where you're more heavily a mental stat built design where you're not going to wade into combat really with either. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend that one. I'm just saying you could definitely see how that would play out. So on screen here, you can see if you're going for more of a heavy armor build that's going to get into melee, always intelligence is your primary ability score. You're going to want to lean into that. But after that, probably strength and then constitution and dexterity. The con here, because you need the survivability and dexterity, because you're going to have to really start out with medium armor just because of the cost of heavy armor. So you're going to want that 1 to dex, but you probably won't ever increase that unless you want higher reflex saves. And then wisdom and charisma after that. Keep in mind, wisdom is less important here because you'll be able, once you're at level 3, to roll initiative with your intelligence. So you don't really need wisdom even for that. It's just for your will saves. When we look at more ranged setups, or potentially some melee setups with finesse weapons, but probably more ranged, dex will be your secondary. You're still going to want probably 1 to strength, and you're going to have your con if you want to get some medium armor. However, you could potentially drop that strength and go with wisdom or charisma. If you're going to go with light armor instead, you won't have enough to build out the basic leather armor all the way at level 1. You need 1 strength to get at least, studded leather and wear it without any penalty. And finally, if you want to go down that mental stat route, int with maybe charisma or wisdom as a secondary, you're still going to want some strength so that you can get some sort of armor on there, meaning you can get at least working your way toward medium and heavy armor, but this is going to be kind of a low armored setup. Again, I don't recommend this one, but if you just want to keep away from enemies entirely and focus on all of your mental stats, being the face of the party, being able to demoralize well in combat while doing all of your tactics, this could be a really interesting build for that kind of thing. When we look at builds, it's hard to say the easiest to play, but I'm going to suggest the following 5 tactics for our first level 1 build, and kind of a strength melee build that I think could easily get in and wade into combat. If you want that, it might actually be easier to go with a range build here, but this is what I'm going to show off, and I do think this plays out well. So what are my 5 tactics at level 1? Well, I'm going to start with Gather to Me. This is a nice way to help allies get back in your banner aura to make sure that they can take advantage of your tactics and just kind of get them away from maybe potentially negative situations, especially early on. The second would be Pincer Attack. This is solid for setting up a good next round with off-guard enemies. Setting up your allies to be able to take attacks against off-guard enemies is really great if you've got some melee combatants or you've got a rogue in your party. End It. This is another one. I don't think I'd have this one necessarily prepared at the gate, but it could be a cool one if you think you're going to go up against a lot of lower level minion type enemies and you just want to end things without your allies getting hurt for no reason. Strike Hard is just an easy one to choose. I know it's 2 actions and it just allows a single reaction, but you've got some big fighter up front. This can be a good way to just chop out another enemy off the block. And finally, Protective Screen. This is a great way to support your ranged or caster allies in really bad situations where they might fear reactive strikes by moving away and might just be able to end it if they had the ability to cast or deal damage with an enemy up in their face. As far as the ones I would prepare most of the time, it would be Pincer Attack, Strike Hard, and Protective Screen. So what does the rest of my level 1 build look like? Well, I'm probably going to go sword and board with this design. So I'll take a sword, maybe something simple like a bastard sword that I can hold in 1 hand, but if I want to go, I could lean into 2 hands. Throw on some chainmail. Again, heavy armor is just too expensive, so I'll just take this instead. I'll be able to fill out with a solid 18 AC without raising a shield. Then I'll take a steel shield because, again, I think this really leads to a nice sword and board style play. As far as my stats, I'm going to have +4 in int, +3 in strength, +1 in con, and +1 in dex. Builds out my armor, gives me a good way to strike with my sword, and still leans into my intelligence as my primary ability score. And for a level 1 feat, I'm going to go with Officer's Medical Training because I like getting access to that medicine. I like using my intelligence for it, and I want to be able to heal allies in combat from level 1. All right, so let's jump into a combat example and show off what the gameplay is all about. A newly formed squad of demon hunters have come to a known activity hotspot. The commander, Revia, barbarian, Chuck, and sorcerer Mina were about to give up when a rift opened not 60 feet from them, demons pouring out. The party immediately leaps into battle, rolling initiative. The barbarian going into a rage. The commander goes first, but delays until after the sorcerer's turn. Luckily, the barbarian is up and rushes in, sword in hand. He manages to get up to the first demon and swing. With a solid strike, he lands the blow, decimating the creature. With the last action, he attempts to demoralize, but fails miserably. 2 of the demons then rush the barbarian, flanking him. Both land a single strike for a total of 10 damage with their spine-like teeth. The sorcerer then moves slightly to gain distance before letting loose a blast of electricity, damaging 2 of the demons but killing neither. After the delay, Revia steps in and for 1 action, flanks with the barbarian before giving the strike hard tactic to the barbarian, who gladly complies. With a reaction, the barbarian strikes the flanked demon for a critical hit, dealing 26 damage. 2 down, 2 to go. The final demon then rushes the sorcerer, landing 2 bites, leaving the sorcerer with only 4 hit points. This doesn't sit well with her allies. The barbarian, unfortunately, takes 2 strikes before landing a final blow on the demon that was near him, and can't quite get to Mina. With Mina up, she delays to allow Revia her turn instead. Revia then commands Chuck to use Protective Screen. He quickly rushes over to Mina. Revia then makes her way over to the creature, flanking with Chuck. Now that the demon cannot use reactions to strike, Mina casts a final blast at the creature, destroying it with electricity in time to watch the portal close up. Hopefully that gives you an idea of what you can do with a commander in combat. And now that we've talked through this, I am going to go look at all the tactics, which we are going to rank in a very long ranking video because there are a lot of tactics to go through. While I work on that, you can start looking at building your first commander, and as always, adventure on.